Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Quote for today is adopt the pace of nature, her secret is patience. Today, the topic of my presentation is air temperature and global warming, and I'm presenting it under the supervision of my professor, Dr. Saira Afzal. Learning outlines of the presentation are introduction of air temperature and global warming, WHO initiatives, recent updates, and MCQs at the end. At the end of this presentation, participants will be able to describe about the air temperature effects of global warming and its consequences. Now, what is air temperature? Air temperature is the measure of how cold or hot the air is. It is the most commonly measured weather parameter. More specifically, the temperature describes the kinetic energy of the gases that make up the air. As gas molecules move more quickly, the air temperature increases. It is governed by many factors. First is incoming solar radiation, second, humidity, and third is altitude. Measurements of air temperature. Temperature is usually expressed in degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. 0 degrees Celsius is equal to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. A more scientific way to describe temperature is in standard international unit Kelvin. 0 degrees Kelvin is called absolute zero. It is the coldest temperature possible and the point at which all molecular motions stop. It is approximately equal to minus 273 degrees Celsius and minus 460 degrees Fahrenheit. Thermometers that are used to measure the air temperature are basically of three types. They use mercury as the middle agent, alcohol, and digital. Two basic indices are there to measure the air temperature, that are heat stress indices and a predicted 4 hours sweat rate. Now, what is heat stress index? This takes into consideration the metabolic rate and the principal channels of the heat exchange between the human body and the environment. The heat stress index represents the percentage of the heat storage capacity of an average man. A second index that was used for measuring the air temperature is predicted 4 hours sweat rate. The rate at which a man sweats is a good index of the heat stress to which he is subjected, and a sweat rate of 4.5 liters in 4 hours is the upper limit of tolerance in health for work in hot environment. Following are the effects of heat stress. It can be heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat syncope. Now, in next slides, I will explain all of these points in detail. First is heat cramps. Now, what are heat cramps? These are the earliest signs of heat illness. Painful muscle spasms are there. Typically, it occurs in the abdomen, back, and arms. Heavy sweating is accompanied in the heat cramps along with all these pains. Hydration is the best combatant for any heat illness. So heat cramps can also be reduced by improving the hydration status of that patient or person. Now heat syncope. Syncope is fainting or dizziness as a result of overheating. The basic symptom of the heat syncope is fainting with or without mental confusion. Heat syncope is caused by peripheral vasodilatation, and it results in diminished blood flow to the brain and dehydration. So it can result in causing the dizziness of the patient. Heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is it increase in the body temperature more than 37 degrees centigrade. Muscle weakness and cramps can be there. Rapid weak pulse is there. Nausea, vomiting, dizziness, headache, cool, pale, clammy skin, and excessive sweating. All these are found in heat exhaustion. While in heat stroke, there is increased body temperature that is more than 40 degrees centigrade. Altered mental state, rapid pulse, red, hot, and dry skin, throbbing headache, nausea, vomiting, headache, and disoriented. So, according to this comparison, we found that heat stroke is far more worse than heat exhaustion. These are the few signs and symptoms that are given in the heat stroke, that there is no more sweating. Dry, hot, and red skin is there. Dizziness and headache, along with unconsciousness, vomiting is found. Now, how to diagnose heat stroke? There is pinpoint pupil in the heat stroke. Well, in most of the other types, this is not found. Uh, Pinpoint pupil is also seen in cerebral edema. The prevention is that we should have enough of hydration. Drinks should be enough, and wearing of the light clothes, and do not stay in the closed cars and outside in the environment when it's hot out there. Now, prevention of all these heat stresses, that is heat cramps, heat stroke, heat exhaustion. First is the replacement of water. Persons working under conditions of high temperature and humidity should be encouraged to drink cool water. Regulation of work. There should be periods of rest in between intense work. If signs such as headache and dizziness appear, the person should be removed to a cooler environment and the necessary treatment should be given. Third point is clothing. The clothing worn should be light, loose, and it should be of light color, especially in the hot environment. Fourth is protective devices. Like protective goggles, shields, and helmets are helpful. In the work environment, the temperature and humidity may be controlled by proper ventilation and air conditioning. Another important factor is cold stress. Cold stress are of two types, generalized and localized. In generalized, it is accompanied by hypothermia, while in localized, it is frostbite and trench foot. Effects of cold stress are first is hypothermia, that was generalized. It is characterized by numbness, loss of sensation, muscle weakness, desire for sleep, coma, and it can also lead to death. Local cold injury may occur at temperature above freezing, wet cold condition as in immersion or trench foot. At temperature below freezing, that is dry cold conditions, frostbite occurs. The tissue freeze and the ice crystals form in between the cells. The affected part should be warmed using water at 44 degrees centigrade. Warming should last about 20 minutes at a time. Intake of hot fluids promotes general rewarming. Now, there are a few impacts of global air temperature changes. First is global warming. Second is stratospheric ozone depletion. Third is decreased biodiversity. Fourth is desertification. Fifth is macro and micro ecosystem changes that are leading to pathogenesis or reemergence. All of these factors are of immense importance. However, I will be discussing global warming in the next slides. Now, what is global warming? Since the Industrial Revolution, the global annual temperature has increased in total by a little more than 1 degree Celsius. Between 1880, the year that accurate record keeping began, and 1980, it rose on an average by 0.07 degrees Celsius every 10 years. Since 1981, however, the rate of increase has more than doubled. For the last 40 years, the global annual temperature rises by 0.18 degrees Celsius per decade. This is a graph that is shown how the temperature changes are uh, being done in annually, like from 1818, 1900s, 1920, 1940, and till 2020. It is seen that it's constantly in increasing trend. This is a color coding system diagram that shows temperature differences. This color coded map shows a progression of changing global surface temperature since 1884. Dark blue indicates areas cooler than average, and dark red indicates areas warmer than average. And it can be seen in the globe that approximately 40% of the area is in darker red color, that is hot. Causes of global warming. Global warming occurs when the carbon dioxide gas and other air pollutants collect in the atmosphere and absorb sunlight and solar radiations that have bounced off Earth's surface. Normally, this radiation would escape into space, but these pollutants, which can last for years to centuries in the atmosphere, trap the heat and causes the planet to get hotter. These heat-trapping pollutants, especially carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, water vapors, and synthetic fluorinated gases, are known as greenhouse gases, and their impact is called as the greenhouse effect. Uh, Another effect of the global warming is first is the disappearing of glaciers. Early snowmelt and severe droughts will cause more dramatic water shortage. Rising sea levels will lead to even more coastal flooding. Forests, farms, and cities will face troublesome new pests, heat waves, heavy downpours, and increased flooding. Disruption of habitats such as coral reefs and meadows could drive many plants and animal species to extinction. Allergies, asthma, infectious diseases outbreaks will become more common due to increased growth of pollen producing ragweed, higher levels of air pollution, and the spread of conditions favorable to pathogens and mosquitoes. This slide shows that there are approximately 250,000 additional deaths has been happened from climate sensitive diseases, that is heat stress, malnutrition, dengue, and malaria from 2030 onwards. 2 to 1 benefit cost ratio health gains values from climate action is double the cost of mitigation policies at global level. Climate change is impacting human lives and health in a variety of ways. It threatens the essential ingredients of good health, clean air, safe drinking water, nutritious food supply, and self shelter. Areas with weak health infrastructure, mostly in developing countries, will be the least able to cope without assistance to prepare and respond. WHO supports countries in building climate resilient health system and tracking national progress in protecting health from climate change. Reducing emissions of greenhouse gases through better transport, food, and energy use choices results in improved health, particularly through reduced air pollution. This shows UN climate changes. First is 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. This was made to lower their emissions by setting new standards and crafting new policies to meet or even exceed those standards. The world not working fast enough to avoid the worst impacts of climate changes, scientists tell us that we need to reduce global carbon emission by as much as 40% by 2030. Now, goals and targets of global agreement that are first is keeping a global temperature rise by less than 2 degrees Celsius in this century. Balance between emission by sources and removal by sinks in the second half of the century. And third is mitigation that enhances and conserves sinks. Paris Climate Agreement are the three basic points are there. First is limit the average global temperature increase to less than 20 degrees Celsius to achieve net zero emission by mid-century. Second is enhance resilience and adaptation to climate impacts certain to occur. Third is align financial flows in the world with those objectives. United Nations says that to take urgent actions to combat climate changes and its impacts. Climate crisis continued that are shown according to the UN nations that in 2020 global average temperature was at 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial baseline. That led to woefully off track to stay at or below 1.5 degrees Celsius as called for in the Paris Agreement. However, rising greenhouse gas emissions required shifting economies towards carbon naturally. Climate finance increased to 10% in 2015 to 16 and 2017 to 18, reaching an annual average of 48.7 billion. 125 of 154 developing countries are formulating and implementing national climate adaptation plans. The major components according to United Nations are: first is drinking water. Clean water is an essential element for human health, well-being, and prosperity. Tree plantations, sanitations, solid waste management, hygiene, and COVID-19. COVID-19 is recently added, however, all these were previously added to. Sanitation is one of the essential necessities of human life and dignity. Access to sanitation services should be necessary for all the patients. Now, Pakistan Climate Change Act that was given in 2017. It was given to meet Pakistan's obligations under international conventions relating to climate change and address the effect of climate change. This shows the map of Pakistan and profile that the number of climate laws and policies are about 15. However, country greenhouse gas emissions percentage of the global emission shown is 0.85%. Pakistan climate change challenges are shown in this slide. That Pakistan's seventh most vulnerable country to climate changes, and Pakistan has suffered approximately 141 extreme weather events from 1997 to 2018. Deaths are shown that in June 2015, the Karachi has increased by nearly 1,200 people according to population. The number of heat wave days and heat waves led to the death of five-fold in the last 30 years. And in the last 50 years, the annual temperature has risen by 0.5 degrees centigrade. Now coming towards the recent updates. First is an article published is global warming and its health impact. It shows that the climate change scenarios include a change in the distribution of infectious diseases with warming and changes in outbreak associated with weather extreme events. After floods increased, cases of leptospirosis, campylobacter infections, and other infections are being reported. Pathogens transmitted by vectors are particularly sensitive to climate change because warmer climate presents more favorable conditions for the survival and completion of the life cycle of the vector. In the next years, the engagement of the health sector would be working to develop prevention and adaptation program in order to reduce the cost and burden of the climate change. The issue of allergy focused on relationship between climate change, air pollution, and human health. Climate change is an important medical aspect in allergology as we are observing an increased incidence of allergic diseases indirectly related to rising temperature and are becoming high socioeconomic burdens. Another article published is Global Warming, Climate Change, Air Pollution, and Allergies. This was published in 2020. Now coming towards the MCQ session. First MCQ is the rate at which a man sweats is a good index of heat stress to which he is subjected. Which indices is used to measure it? Option A predicted 0.5 hours sweat rate. Option B predicted 2 hours sweat rate. Option C predicted 4 hours sweat rate. Option D is predicted 6 hours sweat rate. And option E is predicted 8 hours sweat rate. Option C is the right one, predicted 4 hours sweat rate. Second MCQ is a brick worker presented with high body temperature, that is 108 degrees Fahrenheit, and profound disturbances including delirium, convulsions, and partial or complete loss of consciousness. The skin is dry and hot. He was working for last 8 hours without break. What is the most probable diagnosis? Option A is heat stress. Option B is heat stroke. Option C, heat syncope. Option D, heat exhaustion. And option E, heat cramps.
D.
Heat
B.
stroke B.
Yes, option B is the right one. Heat stroke is the answer. Third is global warming occurs by which major air component which collects in the atmosphere and absorbs sunlight and solar radiation that have bounced off the Earth's surface. Option A is carbon monoxide. Option B is nitrous oxide. Option C, carbon dioxide. Option D is ozone, and option E is sulfur dioxide gas.
C.
C.
And yes, option C is the right one. Fourth is global warming is an international public health concern. Which of the following is an international agreement to prevent global warming? Option A is Clean Green Pakistan. Option B UNICEF Agreement. Option C Paris Agreement. Option D is Selenium Development Goal number 3. And option E is Elma Ata Declaration.
C.
Yes, option C is the right one. This is Paris Agreement. Fifth MCQ is global warming causes extremes of temperature, which decreases biodiversity, causes desertification, coastal areas to rise, and droughts in areas. The best way to control it is option A is balance between production of carbon dioxide and sinks of carbon dioxide gas. Option B is balance between production of sulfur dioxide gas and carbon dioxide. Option C is balance between production of O3 ozone and sink of ozone gases. Option D balance between the production of sulfur dioxide and sinks of sulfur dioxide gases. And option E is increased use of fossil fuels for the production of energy.
A.
Option A is the right one. The best way to control is the balance between production of carbon dioxide gas and the sinks of carbon dioxide gas. Sixth MCQ is a soldier presented to hospital with the history of working in cold and damp areas, but the history of temperature exposure is not freezing cold, with the signs of blisters and sores on feet that were associated with pain. What is the most probable diagnosis for this patient? Option A is frostbite. Option B is cold feet. Option C is heat hyperpyrexia. Option D is cold cramps. And option E is trench foot.
A.
Option E is the right one, trench foot, because all the scenario that is given falls in this category. 7 MCQ is Clean Green Pakistan is an initiative that underpins behavioral changes and institutional strengthening while envisaging the need to address 5 components. Which one of the following is not a major component? Option is plantation. Option B is nutrition management. Option C is solid waste management. Option D liquid waste management, and option E is food management.
E. Food management.
Yes, this is the right one. Eighth MCQ is it is important to balance production and consumption of carbon dioxide gas to avoid the global warming. Which of the following processes is functional in improving carbon dioxide gas from the atmosphere? Option A lightning, option B deforestation, option C burning of the fossil fuel, option D is photosynthesis, option E is greenhouse effect.
C.
Option D is the right one because in the scenario it is said to be carbon dioxide gas to be removed. So photosynthesis is the process that utilizes this gas. Ninth MCQ is a factory worker presented with heavy sweating, fatigue, thirst, and muscle cramps. On temperature inspection, the temperature is 98 degrees Celsius, degrees Fahrenheit. What is the most probable diagnosis? Option A is heat cramp. Option B, heat exhaustion. Option C is heat stroke. Option D, heat syncope. And option E, heat stress.
B.
B. Heat exhaustion. D.
Option A is the right one because I've already told in this narrative that there are muscle cramps also accompanied with heavy sweating, fatigue, and thirst. So, this is the one. Well, in heat exhaustion, temperature will be a bit higher than 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Last MCQ is which of the following health conditions has increased incidence with global warming? Option A is stunting, option B allergies, option C goiter, option D congestive cardiac failure, and option E dermatitis.
E.
B.
B is the right one because allergies are a broad term. Dermatitis will be right if it is allergic dermatitis. This is the key of MCQs. These are references. This is the YouTube link. And thank you.